What pain will it take to satisfy your sick appetite?
This is the opening track from our new album. This is about a scavenger of human sorrow.
People can see I don't like explaining songs basically these days because I think people basically need to just look at them, read them, and some stuff is very painful, but it's very real.
The first song on Death's sixth and last record, Scavenger of Human Sorrow, sets the stage for the rest of the album right away. From the drum intro, to the furious and fast riffs, to the change in vocal style, to the more introspective lyrics, it gives you a good glimpse of all that is to come on The Sound of Perseverance. Chuck would remark in an interview with Nuclear Blast in 1998, quote, "All these songs aren't depressing. I'm not drowning in my tears of sorrow or open wounds. They're all heartfelt, believe me. But these songs have a strong backbone to them, not falling victim to the elements. Some might think it's a concept album, and in a way, they're all interconnected themes. So there are many things that one must persevere through in a person's life. One of those things is anger. If Flesh and the Power It Holds is about temptation, and Spirit Crusher, mental illness, depression, anxiety, which you should go see my videos on those two songs for more, then Scavenger of Human Sorrow is about persevering through anger, and anger towards someone or something who sucks the life and joy out of you. But much like Spirit Crusher, Chuck imagines this to be personified into a monster, a scavenger of human sorrow, turning a very intangible idea into a monster, one which we can identify with and battle with. Scavenger of Human Sorrow is a very intense and angry track. It pulsates with fury in several parts, while giving the listener some small reprieves from the anger. It pushes and pulls you with the anger contained within. The contrast between the fast and angry sections with the more meandering and progressive parts of the song makes the fast and angry sections feel even more so. The lyrics are biting and are delivered with Chuck's maniacal high-pitched scream, which is so emblematic of this album. This song, like all great art, to me has several meanings to it, which we will get to later on in the video here. The word scavenger is used in nature to denote those who scavenge on prey they have not killed themselves, scavenging their food opportunistically. So what exactly is the meaning of the word scavenger here in this song? Well, I believe Chuck here is referring to scavenging, not of dead animals for food, but rather the scavenging of emotional energy from its target. Parasitic in nature and action, this scavenger of human sorrow feasts upon the emotions of others. In Western cultures, we view scavengers in nature very poorly, often equating them with bad omens or evil, despite the very important role they play in our ecosystems. Think of the vulture, the crow, the hyena. Thus, calling someone a scavenger has built-in negative connotations to it. It makes them seem small, opportunistic, and always at the mercy of luck and the natural course of nature to find their next meal or perhaps their next victim. However, the scavenger described here is more of an active one, actively haunting and leeching off its victim, feeding off the emotional energy from its prey. This all will make more sense when we get to the lyrics of the track a little later on, so bear with me. This track is very special to me, one of the first Death songs that I ever heard, and to be honest, as soon as I heard the drum intro, I was hooked right away. I was truly blown away by it. Then Chuck's vocals came in, and man, my 13-year-old brain was truly blown wide open. Today, we dive deep into another great track in Death's catalog. Let us begin. The song starts off very angry. It's like Richard Christie just sat down at his drum kit and in a rage he just started playing this. Double bass and odd fills are mesmerizing. I seriously think that the drum performance on this record is one of the best of all time, and Richard Christie is an extremely underrated drummer. You know, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my other videos, so I'll just make sure to mention this here. He is just so ferocious and unique and unorthodox in his fills and the way he just seems to flow over the kit. It's like he has 4 arms or something. It's really excellent stuff. Finishing the drum intro with a snare flam, we then get a furious guitar intro to follow it. Similar to the drums, it sounds like if someone is pissed off and then just picked up the guitar and played that lick. Right off the bat, within the first 10 seconds, we are informed by the instruments that this is going to be a very angry and ferocious song. This would have also been the first introduction to the new band, as this is the first track on The Sound of Perseverance, and man, what a way to do it. What a way to introduce the new drummer. It's so good. The intro lick also introduces the key of this song, which is D Phrygian, a key Chuck Schuldiner frequently uses in a song. It is essentially the D minor scale, but with a flattened second degree. It gives the song an off or an evil vibe, especially when the song dwells on the flat second, which it does, and we will see right away how that feels. The song, like many of the other songs in this album, goes back and forth between D minor and D Phrygian, a very common key movement in Death songs. first riff here is also full of anger and is extremely aggressive. We shall call this section 1. Again, it sounds like what someone would play if they are angry over something and they just pick up their guitar and immediately start playing. It is just so aggressive and vengeful, such a fun riff to play. Here we have the riff going from the open D string, palm muted chugging, going to a power chord played on the flat second, and to the minor third, and then to a diminished fourth power chord but played in arpeggiated style. So right away we have 2 flattened degrees in the usual D minor scale, providing us with a very dark sound. Following this, we get another nifty little guitar riff, which again plays off this diminished fourth sound. And while a diminished fourth can also be seen as a major third, in this case, I see it more as diminished fourth, as the sound is distinctly D minor or D Phrygian to me, rather than a major scale. It goes up and then back down, sort of like anger bubbling over. This riff repeats once, and then we get the first vocal lines over top of the same angry, unsettled riff. What pain will it take to satisfy your sick appetite? Going for the kill. Here, Chuck's words are screamed towards the scavenger of human sorrow. It seems that this scavenger's appetite for pain is near endless. It feeds off the pain of its victims. To me, here in the title of the song, the use of the word sorrow is not an accident because it sounded cool. Sorrow is sadness amplified. Painful sadness that reverberates inside oneself and tears you up from the inside. This is what the scavenger of human sorrow feasts upon. This is the pain and anger Chuck is feeling and lashing out at individuals who feast upon the sorrow of others. As the vocals end, the word kill echoes out and we get to the next part of the song. Section 2. Here, the guitars, drums, and bass take on a much different flavor than the previous section. The guitars take a more laid-back approach, and the drums and bass play a bouncy pattern, which is almost completely separate from what the guitars are playing. Another crazy drumming part from Richard Christie. And as a side note before I really get into the meat of this section, this part here must be one of the hardest sections to sing and play guitar at the same time. Just very odd timing with the vocals. It's truly very, very impressive. Always in sight, pray. The time always right, feast. Feed on the pain, taste. Sorrow made flesh, sweet. Here to me, this section feels like memories passing by. Memories of how the scavenger of human sorrow is ever present and always thirsting for more pain. Memories of how he has haunted the individual. He spits out the lyrics about how the scavenger relishes the taste of the pain. It is sweet to him. This person enjoys it. The key of the song switches, and the droning guitars, now harmonized in fifths, represent this constantly in your ear, just as the scavenger is always out on the lookout for its next meal. The keyed changes and harmonized guitars in fifths are all very common themes and tropes in death songs, which Chuck uses quite often and is very stereotypical of his style. As the song moves on, we get another key change, this time to G Phrygian. Now we're in section 3. Once again, the riff here emphasizes the flat second degree of the scale. Slowing down the tempo, the rest is a lot less chaotic than the section preceding it, representing a change from fantastical memories back to reality. Live how you want, just don't feed on me. If you doubt what I say, I will make you believe. Shallow are words from those who starve, for a dream not their own to slash and scar. Here the lyrics take on a much more complex structure. Chuck switches perspectives mid-stanza. He begins by stating the theory of live and let live, essentially, leave me alone and you can continue whatever you're doing. However, this is then immediately countered by the scavenger, insisting his beliefs or negative energy upon them. Quote, I will make you believe. The next 2 lines indicate that the scavenger may not be just one person, but a cabal of many individuals acting in unison to destroy one's dreams and ambitions with their own poisonous attitude. Slashing and scarring refers to an act of violence that could be both metaphorical and literal. Essentially, the scavenger likes to bring people down with his own negative emotions, often maybe through violent or scathing criticisms, and he feeds off that energy of the negative coming off of you. As this section ends and we move on to the next, let me just take a brief moment to say that if you enjoy this deep dive into death songs, of which I have more videos in the playlist linked, hit me with the subscribe. I plan on doing all of The Sound of Perseverance, And I have many other bands and songs ready to go and thoughts on it, so stay tuned. All right, before we move on to section 4, let me get into a bit of what I think the meaning behind the lyrics are here. I think this is a good time to do it. To me, I believe this song is basically the part 2 to Crystal Mountain. I won't get too much into Crystal Mountain here, as I plan on doing a video on that song after I finish with all of the Sound of Perseverance. But to make it short, Crystal Mountain is about how, in Chuck's view, which I think is very influenced by the Anabaptist megachurch stereotypes of Christian belief from the southern United States, that the church was built on a crystal mountain of lies and ignorance. Then, the Scavenger of Human Sorrow adds to the message. Not only is it built upon lies and ignorance, but also upon the sorrow and pain of Christ, as well as the followers of his faith, and how they relish and scavenge from the pain and sorrow of Christ. The ritual of Holy Communion is done by feasting upon both the metaphorical and, in some cases, literal belief that Christ's literal flesh and blood is being consumed, which is an act of scavenging by definition. And let me just say that certainly not all Christian subsects believe this, not at all. They are consuming the body and blood of Christ, who perished on the cross. Thus, that is an act of scavenging by definition. Feed on the pain, taste. Sorrow made flesh, sweet. Christ was also said to have suffered to save all of us from our own sins. He suffered more than anyone else. By being betrayed by his followers, and also his crucifixion and torture by the Romans, in essence, he suffered so that humankind may be saved. In that sense, everyone in the faith, or all of human beings, may be considered a scavenger of human sorrow, as we are scavenging life force from Christ. I will get back to this later on, but let's keep this in mind while we go through the rest of the song. The other meaning, which I think this song also refers to, I will get to later on, but let's move on. In section 4, the intensity builds, the tempo jumps. Here we have a palm muted riff again, but this time combined with a relentless double bass and pounding toms. Again, to me it sounds like what someone would play if they were extremely angry. The drums build up with the riff until it explodes. Then we get a more traditional death metal drum beat with fast double bass drums and ride cymbals. A very exciting section, one of my favorites in all of Death's catalog. The build up with just the toms and the guitars coming in before it explodes is really, really good. I love it. Here we get the next lines in the song. Big words, small mind. Behind the pain, you'll find a scavenger of human sorrow. Scavenger. We are then taken back to the double bass and tom drumming. This time it is even more anger, with Richard Christie repeatedly smashing the China cymbal. Again, the riff comes back with vengeance, just as intense as before. Abstract theory, the weapon of choice used by a scavenger of human sorrow. Scavenger. In these passages, Chuck is spitting venom at the scavenger of human sorrow, attacking the intellect behind them. Big words and small minds. Abstract theory being used as a weapon. Similar to Spirit Crusher, in what we consider the chorus of the song, Chuck names the monster directly, warning us of the tactics it may use to feed off you. During this section, the pedal note that is being played, palm muted, moves up when the vocals come in, going from the pedal D note and up to a B flat before moving back down to a G. This increase in pitch adds an extra level of franticness and intensity to the section, and is very typical of melodic death metal, of which I think that Death does not get a lot of credit for how much they influenced melodic death metal as a genre. And then, just like that, the section ends very abruptly. Now, we shall move on to the bridge. The Germans have a word, Treppenwitz, which literally means stairwit, but as an idiom means the thought or feeling of thinking something to say after the event or situation is ended. So you leave a party and while walking home the stairs, you think of something that you should have said to the guy who bumped into you, for example, or the guy who clowned on you at the party, essentially. However, you were already at home, and this just goes around your brain, and you can't say anything about it because, well, you're not at the party anymore. Treppenwitz. This is what the bridge section reminds me of. A slow, uneasy bass solo part moving into the harmonized guitars and drums, which sounds like a fever dream version of section 2, into the solo, whose riffs underneath are very similar to the riffs in section 1 and section 4. It sounds like someone who, after dealing with the scavenger, or the scavengers, fuming with anger, is thinking of all the things that they should have said to them. But that is just me. You may have a different interpretation of this part. Chuck and Shannon trade off guitar solos. Shannon's solo in particular I very much enjoy, especially as the song slows down for just a bit. And then Richard Christie's drumming picks the intensity right back up with more double bass before we get to the repeat of section 1, which you should go see my video on the songwriting of Chuck Schuldiner for more. Back to section 1. Which is mostly the same besides the lyrics. I will not discuss and get into the rest of the song, as essentially it is just a repeat of sections 1 to 4, which is very typical for death songs, but I will get into the lyrics. Here, in the section 1 repeat, Chuck screams, "So you have traveled far across the sea to spread your written brand of misery." The last non-repeated lyrics in the song, "Who is traveling across the sea?" To me, this phrase, "traveled far across the sea," is a metaphor for one with a large reach or influence over a large part of the planet. Perhaps a metaphor for how evangelists would go on missions to spread the good word. Or perhaps it's a more personal line, one directed towards a specific individual. You may never know. But the written brand of misery is an interesting line. This could be the Bible itself, or as I will get into very shortly here, I think this may be rumors or gossiping, or even slanderous remarks about Chuck, or it could even be just negative writings about him, negative reviews. We may never know. But in the same interview which I quoted earlier, Chuck would remark, "The title, The Sound of Perseverance, cannot describe the point of life I'm at any better. I have passion and other things that help me persevere through all the industry bullshit, including rumors. After 14 years in the music industry, I can honestly say that there are plenty of people who want to see me fall flat on my face and will do things to make that happen. Not just to me, but to other bands out there. You've got to find an outlet for what these types of people do to you, and for me, this is it. I'm pissed people are always trying to dig a hole in front of me for me to fall into, and that's where a lot of the aggression for this album and some of the lyrics come from. There's also personal stuff that I don't want to get into, but a lot of people will be able to relate to. Certain things I'll leave up to people out there to judge what it might be about." So here, in this interview, he's sort of saying that a lot of these lyrics are very personal for me and can maybe be about individual persons themselves. In another interview, which I found on the same site, emptywords.org, which is an absolute gold mine for death content, he would remark when asked what was the biggest BS he ever had to deal with, quote, "There are some annoying musicians crossing my path. At some point in time, I could get very angry about all the stories that were told about me, about how unpredictable I was. However, I nowadays can handle those kind of things much better. Apparently there are people who are bored that they have plenty of time to gossip about others endlessly. I no longer consider it my problem, but theirs." I forgot to mention that this was also an interview from 1998 about The Sound of Perseverance being released. He then says in another interview from the same year, quote, "Scavenger of Human Sorrow is about people who seem to thrive off the troubles and downfalls of others, and how the media seems preoccupied with the dark side of life and obsessed with making a buck at the expense of human misery." End quote. To me, after reading all these interviews, it seems that The Scavenger of Human Sorrow could have been about a lot of people. From people and music critics who snubbed Symbolic and called it weak or soft, to maybe someone at the previous record label of Roadrunner, of which Chuck had immense hostility towards, to maybe a previous musician spreading falsehoods and rumors about it. We may never know, as he left it purposely vague. However, I came to my conclusion about the song being about the Christian ideal of suffering from Christ being on the cross before reading all these interviews. And perhaps my analysis here is flawed, but to me, this is what makes great art great. The same piece of art being able to resonate deeply with different people on different things. Maybe this song is about the scavenging of human sorrow during Holy Communion. Or maybe this is about some asshole at a record label. Maybe it's about all these things all at once. everyone has a different opinion on what the Mona Lisa is smiling at. So everyone should be able to have a different opinion of who Chuck Schuldiner is talking about and who is the scavenger of human sorrow.
Thank you! Thank you!
So that was my analysis of Scavenger of Human Sorrow. One of the best opening tracks of all time in my opinion. You know, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with my analysis or do you have a different opinion? What is your take on this song? I'm always curious to hear your guys' thoughts. This video here took me a while to make. Not in the sense of editing and writing the script, but just listening to the song over and over and over again, trying to come to grips with what and who Chuck is talking about. I must have listened to the song over 100 times since I released the video on Spirit Crusher. You know, the song really had me confused for a good while, and I'm worried that I may have overanalyzed and over-intellectualized the song. But hey, you know what? I'm going to stick with my analysis about it. But of course, you know, leave what you think the song's about down in the comments. I'm very curious. But just a little housekeeping before I sign off here. I'm going to try to get one of these deep dives out every month here for you guys. I am currently working full-time and in 2 bands rehearsing, so hopefully one a month should not be too hard and a good target for me to hit. Of course, I'm going to continue on with all my regular videos as well. You know, I'm planning to cover all of the Sound of Perseverance before moving on to other death tracks, and I'll probably redo Flesh and the Power It Holds while doing that as well. That was one of my first videos that I really released seriously on this channel, and I think I could do that song more justice. So the next song that I'll be diving deep on won't be Death, but it's a band which I've covered previously on the channel and think you guys will really enjoy. Anyways, thanks for watching, you guys. I hope I'm doing Chuck's legacy proud. These songs are art and should be treated as such. Cheers, and rest in peace, Chuck.